I welcome all the students for today's class, and in this lecture video we are going to discuss about what are the different steps involved in the strategy formulation and also the strategy implementation. Now, let us see the lecture objectives. To understand the process of strategy formulation, to know the strategy implementation mechanism. At the end of the lecture, you will be aware about the process of strategy formulation and you will be able to analyze the strategy implementation mechanism. Now, what is a strategy formulation? Strategy formulation is a process by which the organization chooses the most appropriate course of action to achieve its defined goals. So now strategy formulation starts with the taking the inputs from the SWOT analysis. In the previous class, we discussed about SWOT analysis. So the analysis of strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. This will give us the direction for the future course of action. So, this SWOT analysis gives some kind of inputs that where we are, how to proceed with, what kind of things that are required to be done, kind of inputs will be given. By taking these inputs, we will be able to formulate a suitable strategy for the organization. Let us say for example, in the SWOT analysis, we came to know that in a one particular area we are weak. So, as a strategy formulation, in this strategy formulation, we try to develop a kind of strategy where we can make our weakness into strength. So, that way this strategy formulation will start and finally strategies will be developed and implemented. So, it is the process in which an organization chooses the most appropriate course of action, best appropriate action for the organization. So, this process is essential for the organization's success because it provides a framework for actions that will lead to the anticipated results. Now, let us see the need for strategy formulation. What is the need for strategy formulation? The strategy formulation is needed. The formulation of sound strategy facilitates a number of actions and desired results that would be difficult otherwise. So, whatever the results that you are expecting, if the results you want to be good, then your strategy must be accurate. That is why formulation of strategy is very important. A strategic plan, when communicated to all the members of the organization, provides the employees with a clear vision what the purposes and objectives of the firm are. So, when a strategy is developed and strategic plan is developed and it must be communicated to all the people, even in the lower sections of the people, then the people who work with the organization by knowing in what intention that they are working for the organization. So, this is very important and it is a key for the organizational success. The formulation of strategy forces the organizations to examine the prospect of change in the foreseeable future and to prepare for change rather than to wait passively until market forces compel it. So, the planning, the formulation of strategy, every strategy what you formulate, it forces the organization to examine the prospect of change. So, while you are making a strategy, it takes into consideration of future changes. To expect the future change, by anticipating the change only you develop the strategy and implement the strategy. So, it forces you to look into the future and anticipate those changes right now, and you may not wait until the market hits you. So, you will be prepared for what the future is going to hit you. Strategic formulation allows the firm to plan its capital budgeting. So, now capital budgeting decisions are long term in nature and highly capital intensive, so irreversible in nature. So, when capital budgeting decisions are taken, since they are irreversible, you need to be more cautious about it. So, the strategic formulation allows the firm to take these long term decisions in a better way. Companies have limited funds to invest and must allocate capital funds, so where they will be most effective and derive the highest returns on their investments. So companies have limited funds. Every company will have limited resources, not abundant resources. They will have limited resources to invest their money and must allocate the capital funds where they must most effective and derive highest returns on their investment. So the strategies will guide the organization as where to invest, and in case of investment in such an alternative, how much amount of return that you will generate. So all this is a part of strategy formulation. That's why the strategy formulation is required. Now let's see the steps in strategy formulation. What are the different steps involved in the strategy formulation? The first step in the strategy formulation is the setting organizational objective or organization's objectives. So a broader level objective must be set for the strategy formulation as a base. So this particular organization objective will be a route for the organization overall direction, and based on that overall direction we try to develop our own different other strategies related to functional strategies and related to technical strategies. So these are all must be based on the core strategy. This one is nothing but an organizational objective. We need to set up this organizational set on objective as a first step, and then evaluating the organizational environment. Just now we have seen there are internal environmental factors and external environmental factors, and then you need to evaluate these organizational environment. So whether internally whether we are stronger enough, externally we are stronger enough. So these environmental factors, when you study, then you will come to know and that whether we are fit internally and externally or not. So this information is again taken into consideration for the further strategy formulation process. Setting quantitative targets. This is another important. So whenever you are setting a target, it must be quantified. When you are quantifying a target, then it will be measured. When you measure it, then you will be able to understand in the future whether you have achieved the target or not. That's why your target must be set based on quantitative way. So say for example, I want to achieve more sales. No, our target cannot be set in this way. Previously I have generated 1000 sales. Now your target must be 1020, 1050. So this way the setting target is nothing but a quantitative way of setting targets. So then we will be able to measure it, and finally it will be helpful for further analysis. And next step, aiming in context with the divisional plans. Yes, aiming in context with the divisional plans means further in the down level we are supposed to take up another plans, initiate actions. So for initiating actions in the down level, so again you need to set a context, put the context for doing their own work. Say for example, we set certain target, 20% sales maximization target. So then sales department will take up that target and they will have their own targets like monthly targets, weekly targets. So that way you are going to give this context to the other set of people. Next, performance analysis. Then you will be able to understand the performance of the organization, because you have already set a quantitative targets, right? Then after a period of time, then you will analyze whether you are able to reach the target or not, fail to reach the target. You will be able to understand. This process is known as performance analysis. So in case your performance is not good, then you will be able to continue with that. Otherwise you need to take up some kind of change in the strategy, and finally you will be able to select this strategy. So you need to choose a particular strategy. The next step is a strategy implementation. So strategy implementation is the process by which an organization translates its chosen strategy into action plans and activities. So unless and until you implement a strategy, it won't work. So you must implement a strategy. So you have developed a well strategy, okay, but unless and until you implement it, it won't work. That's why strategy implementation. So strategy implementation is a process by which an organization translates its chosen strategy into action plans and activities. So you will exhibit your plan. During this process, what you do is you allocate the resources during the strategy implementation process, and set out the strategy and able to enable the organization to achieve its strategic objectives. So finally, during the process of implementation, you will be able to make the organization reach the strategic objectives. So this process is known as strategy implementation. But what are the key factors for the effective strategy implementation? So, while setting the strategy is of important, and more important is strategy implementation. So, the way you implement your strategy is again even more important than setting a target. So that's why, what are the different factors which makes your strategy implementation effective? First thing is securing adequate resources and budgets. So adequate resources and budgets are required, even though you may have an excellent strategy with the organization. But to implement that, what is required is adequate resources are required. Unless and until you have adequate resources, even you may have a wonderful plan also, sometimes it may fail due to lack of resources. That's why you need to secure the adequate resources and budgets required for the implementation. A fluid strategy for a fluid environment. So certainly environment may change. So when the environment is changing, if it needs more resources, then your budget must be also flexible. In that way, when your strategy, when the environment is fluid, so you need to have a flexible strategy with you. Anticipate potential change management issues. So whenever the top level management changes, like CEO change or top level managing director change, so these potential change of management issues must be anticipated. We need to understand and capture this particular change and exhibit it. Engage and incentivize employees and stakeholders. So employees and stakeholders are very, very important. You always must engage them in the due course of implementation of your strategies. In the last step, now we'll see the steps in strategy implementation. What are the different steps that are involved in the actual strategy implementation? Step 1 is evaluation and communication of strategic plan. First of all, we receive certain targets like strategic plans from the top management. So now first we will evaluate the strategic plan, how far that it is better and feasible for the implementation. So once the evaluation is completed, and we will communicate this particular strategic plan to even the lower sections of the people. Suppose if a strategic plan is developed at the top level, medium level people, at the assistant managers or associate managers, and then it must again reach to the lower level people who are working in the back offices. So these are all, this particular thing is a first step in strategy implementation, evaluation and communication of the strategic plan. And in step 2, development of an implementation structure. So how we are going to implement your strategy? Yes, we have developed this particular strategy and we are going to implement it. So how we are going to implement it? So that thing is nothing but development of implementation structure. So this will guide the middle level people as how do they should prepare for the implementation, and the timely preparation is required for the implementation. So this timely preparation is ensured by the development of implementation structure. And in the step 3, development of implementation that support policies and programs. So now development of implementation is simply the actual implementation of the things like support policies and programs that are required for the implementation. So for the implementation, you may need some kind of policies as how to proceed with for the implementation of these particular strategy, and also what kind of programs that you engage during the implementation of these strategies. You must know about it as a step 3. As a step 4, budgeting and allocation of resources. Now, we will budget and we will allocate the required resources for the actual implementation of the different strategies what we have set. And in the step 5, discharge of functions and activities. Now, actual work starts now in the strategic implementation in their respective departments. Now, let us conclude the topic by saying strategy formulation is the process by which an organization chooses the most appropriate actions courses of action to achieve its defined goals. So, strategy implementation is the process by which an organization translates its chosen strategy into action plans and activities. Both play an important role in corporate planning process. Now, let us see a small quiz on the topic. DAS involves the budgeting and allocation of resources. Strategy implementation. Now, DAS involves the firm to plan its capital budgeting, its strategy formation. So, which of the following is not a major element of strategic management process? Is it a formulating strategy? Is it implementing the strategy? Is it evaluating the strategy? Or is it assigning administrative tasks? Yes, it is assigning administrative tasks because it is not a major element of corporate strategic management process. So, that is what the today's topic. Now, thank you for participating.